What's good? Cyrus here. Pop up live just for a little bit. Actually, it's not on good terms or a happy topic. At least 14 children dead, multiple injuries reported after shooting at Texas elementary school. Tragedy strikes again. It just like everyone else is feeling, it feels like it never ends. So that frustration, I know, I think right now it's fair to have the natural emotions and frustrations of the moment. As my wife was kind enough to go pick up, usually I pick up the kids. My wife was like, I'll go pick up my son from kindergarten. He's almost at his last day of school and he'll be a first grader in the fall. To to go to Twitter and see this type of news, man, we just went through tragedy. We just talked about Buffalo. We talked
I'm
about
John
Walter
Dickerson
Shaw.
in Washington.
I'm going to bring in the live report so we can get it going. If everybody's coming
Hello,
in.
everyone. I'm Lana Zach. I have continued coverage on the breaking news out of Texas. At the most recent press conference, Pete Arando of the Uvalde Police Department said there are, quote, several injuries and some deaths following a mass casualty event at an elementary school in Texas. Earlier, we heard from Governor Greg Abbott, who said that an 18-year-old male, quote, shot and killed horrifically, incomprehensibly 14 students and killed a teacher. The shooting happened in the town of Uvalde, Texas, which is about 80 miles from San Antonio. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the suspect, 18-year-old Salvador Romas, is deceased. Law enforcement is believed to have killed him. Two officers were struck by rounds, but they are not seriously injured. A local hospital has confirmed two patients, a 10-year-old girl and a 66-year-old woman, are in critical condition. Joining us now is Keith Taylor. He is a former SWAT team hostage negotiator and a former detective for the NYPD. We are also going to bring in Doug Coons. He is a former FBI special agent and the founder of CEO of Veracity. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. It is with a heavy heart that we are having these types of conversations again. So let's just start off by please asking you to make some sense of something for us first. How do these mass shootings keep happening? I want to start off with you, Doug.
That's a good question. I can't answer that. How do these keep happening? It just seems that they become more frequent and more severe every time. We started doing private investigations and security 3 years ago, and we would get an occasional call to talk about whatever had just happened. And it wasn't that often, but it was still too often. And then as the years have gone by, it seems like it's every month now. And now it's
I'm just going to do a live stream here. This is CBS News. And at least he said, I don't know. I mean, that's a legit answer. It's not, he didn't start out by blaming this or blaming that without any proof. He said, I don't know. I respect that. If you're joining, it's not under good circumstances that this live is happening. Breaking news. 14 children, one teacher dead in shooting. I don't have much details outside of that just yet, but thank you, Keith. Cindy Panama saying, in Panama, every business, private and government schools and church have armed security guards and managers. Shooter control is better than gun control. I don't know. In the chat, let me know what you think. Is that true? What do you think about that? I would prefer that over gun control. I am not for, well, when you say general gun control, we've seen people on Twitter right now, they're advocating to ban all guns because this is obviously a sad situation. The first emotion that comes out doesn't have much logic to it. Let's go back to CBS News for a second here, the audio.
And obviously, it is breaking news. Very little we know at this point about any sort of motives for the shooter, who I will repeat again, we have been told by Texas Governor Greg Abbott that he is in fact deceased. But Keith, I want to stick with you for another minute on this. Why do these shooters seem to be targeting children? It seems like this is too common a refrain.
It may be it's hard to distinguish because it could be something, the connection to the school. If there was, for instance, an employee that had a domestic violence situation, or a student or a former student that had issues with other students or teachers or staff.
I want to go to this thank you, Brass Hound, for stopping by in the comment. Brass Hound says, protect your kids, arm TF up. So he said, arm the F up. It's going to get worse. What concerns me here is we have a lot of economic pressures now. There's a lot of pressure going around right now on a lot of people. And does that economic pressure create an atmosphere for more of this to happen? I don't know what happened. I'm not talking about this situation. I do not like jumping in. I don't know anything about it, the mentality and all that. But when you talk about the pandemic, and for the last one in Buffalo, to my knowledge, there was some discussion about whether pandemic, kind of lockdown type stuff played any role. I don't know for sure. I'm just saying, is that going to increase things? It's interesting because I haven't heard anybody have that conversation on the corporate media. I'm trying to avoid calling them mainstream media because they're really not anymore. They don't have any key viewers in any of the key demos. Michael Malice is the one that really opened me up. He was like, why are we calling them mass media, mainstream media? They're not mainstream anymore. They're corporate. I'm going to go back to the feed here.
And Doug, we obviously all still have very much on our mind the Buffalo shooting. In this case, the suspected shooter reportedly acted alone, and unlike the Buffalo shooter, is deceased. Could he still be held accountable for the incident?
The deceased held accountable? Well, they're going to be...
I'm going to go to this comment here. Bridges Hogg, thank you for stopping by. End public schools or arm teachers or pay for effing security. Is it feasible to have armed security in every school? I don't know. If that is feasible, are there studies would that actually help this? I don't know. If it would, then yes. Bridges might be a libertarian, and public schools is a very common libertarian approach to public education. And that has to be discussed also. It would be a very big, so for me and my family, we both work. So it would be a huge change in our life, but these are your kids we're talking about. What's more important? That's fair. The armed teachers, I think that can happen. I am not against armed teachers as long as they're trained, of course. But I don't think that's going to be necessarily the answer. But I have no problems with that at all. Going back to the audio here.
That will allow the investigators to determine if there are others that are involved with this incident.
And Keith, as we're trying to make sense of all of this, obviously there is no real sense that can be made of such a horrific occurrence. But as we're trying to piece together what we've learned, what happens in the investigation now?
They are going to be reviewing his, as it's been stated earlier, the significant others in this individual's life. They're going to be looking at his computer and his phone, and they're going to be carefully examining the relationships he had with those who may have had some role in his efforts to do this. They're going to look at that gun, where if it was legally obtained, where it was obtained, how it was obtained. If it was illegally obtained, they're going to be doing the same thing, tracking down how he got this weapon or weapons, and it is my concern that as this is a national problem, that our national leaders have to look at it not in a manner, but in a manner where common sense solutions can help to address this problem because it's getting worse. Each year, the death toll is getting higher.
And we do know.
So the comment that he made there, we don't know how the shooter got the weapon. And there's already people clamoring for guns in general to be illegal. So we don't even know what's happening. We don't unravel these things, and we don't look at, okay, gun violence as a whole. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from law-abiding citizens who acquire their guns lawfully? No, that's not where most of this comes from. So I don't want to get too much into that because we've got literally, you can't even imagine to say it, 14 children reportedly dead. So it's like, for me, it's not even the time, but we go through this so often, it always feels like it's not even the time.
Each state has different laws, I think, as far as how these can be bought and sold. There's some loopholes for gun shows and that kind of thing. So I'm sure every avenue is going to be looked at to whether or not that anyone has any culpability in this. And if there were, hopefully they will be held accountable.
This is obviously breaking news. We are bringing you the latest as we have it, but there is some confusion perhaps on the number of casualties. We heard from the governor his statement that the shooter shot and killed horrifically incomprehensible 14 students and killed a teacher. We heard at that press conference that there were many injured and that there were some deaths. What is the situation like right now? Explain it to us, given your background, as people are trying to understand exactly the magnitude of what happened.
Right, before we started, I was watching this, and it looks to me like there are 14 dead, including one adult, mostly children, is the last that I have heard. There's a lot of information coming out sometimes before we actually know everything there's about it, so I'm not sure what the true numbers are. It's certainly horrific either way. We talked briefly about the weapon used, and people automatically think assault rifles, but it only takes seconds to empty a handgun, reload, and empty it again. It could be any kind of weapon, and I don't think we've heard any definitive information about what kind of guns were used. So I guess the question is, we just don't know enough yet to speak definitively on. So
let me clarify. It looks like we don't even know if these statistics, 14 children, 1 teacher dead, is final or accurate based on that comment right there. Keith Cindy Panama says, U.S. is stupid on gun crime, but then there's the other side to this issue. Brasshound says, if we lose our guns, we will be slaves. Thank God these savages don't use explosives. And so with what's going on in the world right now, as we speak, they're meeting in Davos. And they're meeting in Davos, is just my opinion, to find a way, in their eyes, they think they're doing the best thing for the world, to control the world. And Keith, Cindy, I understand the U.S., we look stupid. I agree. This happens all the time, and then we make it political, and the same wash, rinse, repeat over and over again. But the USA is a different type of country. There is no country in the world like our country in the US of A. And one of the fundamental, it is the number 2 amendment in our Constitution. That's how important it was. The pen is mightier than the sword. So number 1, freedom of speech, which obviously is under attack. But that's still what it is. Number 1, freedom of speech. Number 2, the right to bear arms. You can't, there's going to be pros and cons to that. You do have to regulate it in some type of fashion. But this is not Panama. This is not China. This is a different country. We do not operate like everyone else. And I think everybody else in the world should look at the U.S. And if it weren't for the U.S., I think the pandemic would have went down a lot differently. And part of that is the First and Second Amendments, and then the way our government is designed with the branches of government. If it weren't for the judicial branch, we would be in serious trouble right now.
Considerations that take place in any situation such as this.
Doug, we were listening before to our affiliate in the area, KENS, and they had the story of one 10-year-old whose father heard about the shooting, ran to the school, busted open a window, and physically removed their child from that school, they believe, saving their life. Is that where we are now as a country, where parents are feeling like they need to run into danger to try and protect their kids?
It's another hard and good question that I don't really have the answer.
Absolutely. If something's going down and you've got, I mean, that's just instinct as a parent, I think. Easy to say. I'm not in that situation. Easy for me to say. But as me sitting here right now, absolutely.
To the school to do something actively, and there's a double-edged sword to that. As you go in and break in a window to get into that school, the law enforcement officers there don't know who you are and can perceive you as a threat. You could inadvertently make yourself a target.
Explain to us, Doug, as you're talking about these terrified parents, and we are watching people who are trying to figure out the scene right now, whether they're law enforcement or community members or these parents. How are people being notified? What are the logistics for reuniting kids with their parents and getting everybody set up like that?
Well, hopefully they have a plan. And as was mentioned before, I think most schools do practice lockdown drills or whatever they call it in that community. My wife's a teacher, and every quarter or so they go through these, and they have plans, procedures, call lists, things that they practice doing in the event something like this happens, working with local law enforcement, the school resource officer, the fire department, EMS. I have to believe they most likely had some sort of plan. Hopefully it was followed, and hopefully these scared parents and other relatives are notified quickly one way or the other. It's just hard to imagine the panic that's going through them right now. It's only been a few hours. It's
only been a few hours. If you are just joining us, we have learned of a mass shooting event, a mass casualty event in Uvalde, Texas. That's about 85 miles west of San Antonio. We heard from the police department that the mass casualty event was responded to at 11:32 a.m. local time. The shooter is now deceased. We believe that happened at the hands of law enforcement. This was at Robb Elementary School, second, third, and fourth grade students who were getting ready to wrap up the end of the year. Several injuries, some deaths, perhaps as many as 14 dead students per Governor Greg Abbott, and one teacher deceased. I am speaking now with Keith Taylor, a former SWAT team hostage negotiator and former detective for the NYPD, and Doug Coons, a former FBI special agent and the founder and CEO of Veracity, as we are trying to make sense of yet another mass shooting event. Keith, I want to ask you, you had referenced that this is a national problem and we need some common sense solutions. We heard Senator Chris Murphy on the floor. Obviously, he was speaking passionately about his experiences with Sandy Hook Elementary, and he ended it by asking just what are we doing as a country? Given your position, given that you have worked in this area, given that you have worked for the NYPD, and we have just recently covered that subway shooter, the Buffalo shooting, and now we are covering this shooting in Uvalde, Texas. What do you think those national common sense solutions are?
I believe that one of the things that has to be done is there has to be evidence-based solutions, and it may take many different forms. But the first thing that has to happen is the elected officials of the states have to determine the best route to have a national policy towards the licensing of guns, the maintenance of those weapons,
You see, I was feeling him for a second because he said you need to have evidence-based solutions, but then he started talking about the licensings of guns. Well, we need to first find out what the problem is. The guns aren't the problem. A knife doesn't kill people. No weapon kills people. The person using it does that. And I even take that further. There's a lot of people who are against transhumanism. If you don't know what that is, that's basically humans becoming more like androids, or basically like Neuralink puts a chip in your brain and you wouldn't need a cell phone. It'd be in your brain, basically. That type. It's really the singularity between humans and AI. I'm not against transhumanism. Transhumanism can be used as a weapon to control you, but transhumanism isn't the problem. The gun isn't the problem. It's the people who want to use the guns to do certain things. So we have to, number one, I like it, evidence-based, but we got to find out what do we don't even know what the problem is. We don't even agree on what the problem is. So we have to use the evidence to really say, here's what the problem is. We have not defined that. We have not defined that as a country what the problem is. Nobody has said, here's the problem, because people start out and saying, here's the guns are the problem. That's not, no, we don't all agree with that. Our government in USA, I think somebody from Panama was in the chat. Our government in the USA is designed to gridlock when you don't have a consensus. And that's where we're at. So we have to break this down, just like any argument or debate where we start. Let's start with where we agree on. Let's start there, do small pieces of legislation based on that potentially, and move piece by piece. We're moving too fast. We always rush to the place where we don't have agreement. Maybe, as basic as we all agree that kids should be safe in school, even if these are, in the grand scheme of things, a small percentage. When you see stuff like this is too much. Do we all agree with that? Okay, then we move from there. B. Deering, thank you, friend of the show, says, well, we have to let millions of people in. We have no clue who they are. So how do we not know this is a tragic event from open borders? That's what we need to investigate and see. Absolutely. I don't know. There should be no preconceived notions on why this happened or what happened. And then looking back, let's look at the past events. We need to have just evidence. I wish corporate media was honest, because corporate media is just taking sides. Why don't they just do a special on no opinion? These are just the facts. And then let's go from there and see what is an obvious takeaway.
But we see time and time again that these things happen anyway, despite planning, practicing. They happen anyway. So it's just very scary. And I wish I had the answers to solve this crisis, really. It's not just a problem. It just seems to be a vicious loop of violence. And I don't know how we break out of that. I wish I did.
For all of you joining us now, we are covering a mass casualty event in Uvalde, Texas, at a shooting at Robb Elementary School there. We believe that there are about 600 students in the school. It is up to 14 children dead, 1 teacher dead, according to Governor Greg Abbott. The White House press secretary just tweeted out earlier this hour, quote, President Biden has been briefed on this horrific news of the elementary school shooting in Texas and will continue to be briefed regularly as information becomes available. The press secretary continued, his prayers are with the families impacted by this awful event, and he will speak this evening when he arrives back at the White House. President Biden is scheduled to speak about this at around 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
So President Biden is scheduled to speak, and all the things that have happened, the loss of trust has gotten so bad. I really don't want to hear him. I do not want to hear anything from that man right now. after the Buffalo shooting, he ran over to Buffalo and conflated January 6th with the Buffalo shooting. And to take something like that, and there was a racial undertone to the Buffalo shooting. The dude was white, and everyone who was shot, the 10 that were killed, were black. So he runs over there to play up this race card to actually make things worse in our country. That is, I mean, there's so many things to impeach this man for. To me, again, I think that alone is impeachable. I really do. To take a shooting that happened in our country and turn it into something to make it divisive and to attack general people in the media without any proof that there was any type of linkage. I mean, we've had all kinds of stuff. We had the shooter from the guy who shot them up at the baseball game years ago who said that they liked Bernie. That no one ties that to Bernie. I don't want to hear from Joe Biden. This is not a normal time. In normal times, I'd be like, here's our president. Let's listen to our president. Let's hear him out. This isn't the time for divisiveness. Nah, bro. I don't want to hear from you. I do not want to hear one word from you. You are literally the last person on earth I want to hear from right now. And you've earned that. That's where we're at. So we've got in America, I know some people are commenting about, we've got way bigger problems even than this. I mean, we just have fundamental issues where we can't see eye to eye on. And it's got to the point where I never thought in my life that I would say I don't want to hear a word from our president on any type of mass, some type of breaking news event that the whole country is kind of watching and concerned about. I never, growing up, even 2 years ago when I got red pilled, I didn't immediately think I would be in that position. Don't want to hear anything from him. And just like people, even though I have no problem with Trump, but a lot of people said the same thing about Trump. You can have that right, but that's where we are right now. That's pretty. It's tough to find solutions when I don't even want to hear you speak. We're in a marriage right now where it's like we've yelled at each other. I don't want to hear you now. So how do you solve a problem? The only problem we need to solve is to figure out who gets the house, who gets the kids. That's the only problem I want to see solved right now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to even get off to that with all this going on, but that's the undertone that's causing this to keep on happening. I don't want to hear anything from Joe Biden other than maybe we should look at splitting up. That's the only thing I want to hear from that bro right now.
Common sense solutions to this, I think we would be all a lot better off.
Doug Coons, Keith Taylor, I appreciate your law enforcement service. I appreciate you coming on to try and help us make sense of this. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We want to turn now to our affiliate KENS 5 for more coverage on the Texas shooting. They are there on the ground. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says at least 14 children and 1 teacher has died in the school shooting. We are going to continue listening to the very latest.
And patience with us. Please know at this time we are only making a statement. We will be releasing more information as the investigation continues. We appreciate your courtesy. At this time, it concludes our press conference. Thank you.
That was UCISD Police Chief Pete Arredondo. And as you saw, a very short statement there. We did hear from the governor, though, that 14 students were killed and a teacher. And we have just gotten word that Bexar County has sent the medical examiner to Uvalde, to Robb Elementary School, where we believe the students and the teachers remain inside that school. They have set up a staging area there, and it is all taped off with crime tape.
We want to get out to Vanessa Croy, who's there at Robb Elementary School and has an update for us right now about that scene. Vanessa.
They just asked us to move where we were standing on the corner a few minutes ago, and you can see what's pulling up over here. We haven't confirmed exactly what's going on. All that we were told when we were asked to move is that they were moving the investigation to the front of the school. We did see the Bexar County Medical Examiner pull up about 5 minutes ago. We've seen officials from the Texas Department of Emergency Management also here.
Greg, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Tough stream today. I started out laughing. I don't know if you follow the channel. I had the pastor Greg Locke had somewhat of a funny little. I thought it was kind of funny, and then now we have this. What a day! Another crazy day.
Children. We've seen half a dozen, maybe more parents come up here in the last hour asking law enforcement here how to find their children. They've been to the Civic Center, they've been to another area, and they have not been able to find them yet. I did talk to DPS. They said they are creating a new staging area. We're still trying to confirm where that is. As soon as we hear from DPS, we'll let you know as soon as we hear from them. I know that is in the works right now because we want to make sure that we can tell these parents something who are just hurting so much right now, trying to find out where their child is at this hour.
We just can't even imagine. And the truck appears to be possibly a refrigerated morgue that has pulled up next to.
Man. Can't even. I have 2 kids. One just turned 3. The other is 5.5. I can't even barely watch this stuff anymore. It never, I really didn't get a full feeling of life until I had children. Because I was never really an emotional guy. I'm still not. I still joke around. I'm like Data, or is it Data? Data from Star Trek Next Generation. I love that show. The android who's emotionless, and he has to kind of fake emotions when he wants to do it. But when, with kids, I can't even, this is off topic, but there was a Libs of TikTok video where there was a parent who was kind of, parent, you can do what you want to do as a parent, but they were, in my opinion, leading a child down a certain path with their identity that it looked forced. And the video was maybe 1.5 minutes. I literally couldn't watch 10 seconds of it. I was like, I can't watch this. Because I keep envisioning my son, like, what if I or somebody was trying to do this? I'd be like, man, you're really messing with these kids. And then just to see tragedy on this level, I think CBS News is doing a good job covering it at this point. I mean, this is kind of throwback where you just cover the facts. You got a couple people with a little bit of opinion on there. It's not like the talking head CNN stuff and what we see all night, which is just it's become pure trash because they don't allow different ideologies. When they just do the straight up news like this, I don't think it's that bad. Keith Cindy Panama says, fight for your children. No one else will. Parents get involved. Have to. And there's going to have to be sacrifices made. And that's the big thing for me. And I have not, I'm really volunteering at my kid's school, going up there, trying to see what's going on, because I want to make sure that they're not teaching stuff I'm not against. So it's up to me to be a part of that, to be engaged. And you can go to the school and you can see how they really act when you go up there. And I haven't seen too much that I'm concerned about, so I'm happy, but I'm going to have to keep on going, keep on following it, keep on volunteering to make sure that everything looks fine. Trending on Twitter, only in America. Yeah, there's always, no country's perfect. We don't live in utopia. So I will acknowledge 100% there are pros and cons to our country. Just like our government. Our government has become corporatized. That was a con. On paper, the way our government's set up is pretty solid. But things don't work out in reality like they do in theory. In reality, corporations get to buy people. There's loopholes. They're the ones that make the laws that govern them. That's probably the biggest loophole and the reason why we have this issue with these mass shootings. Because we have politicians who govern themselves. Nobody makes laws against them. So all they have to do is manipulate the public into siding with them. And it doesn't have to be on substance. It can be pure emotion. Justin Horwitz says only in America can a party that claims to be pro-life advocate for unlimited guns in the hands of the mentally ill and no baby formula for mothers in need. So a perfect example of someone taking a situation and then just throwing the political book at it. There's no evidence here. There's no substance here. It's just perfect Twitter fodder. Throwing in the pro-life stuff. I have no idea what that has to do with this. Then saying unlimited guns and then talking about no baby formula. What he's talking about is the bill. They called it for baby formula, but there was legitimate reasons for Republicans not to vote for it. And now the Democrats, they label these bills whatever they want. So when you say no, they say, no, you're against this, but the bill isn't really that. And you want to know where we are, why we're here. This type of stuff is why, is we allow it to be. So it's already being weaponized. Body's still warm, and this is where we're at. Only in America, our gun mania is what the rest of the world finds most incomprehensible about America. I hear it all the time when I'm in other countries. We did hear that in the chat too. I understand that. Our culture is not everybody else's culture. Our culture is not for everybody. So there's going to be things that happen in America that don't happen in other places. There are going to be things that happen in other places that don't happen in America. That's the way it is. So I'm not saying we can't be better, but that by itself doesn't affect me. The only thing I've been able to tell them is that I too find it incomprehensible and stupid, maddening, tragic, and sad. The reason why people like this are so strong against gun rights is because they feel like they're always with the corporate viewpoint. If it's the pandemic, Dr. Fauci is God for them. If it's Black Lives Matter, I won't hate Black Lives Matter until somebody tells me to hate them. Or I love Black Lives Matter, no matter how obviously toxic the movement was, at least from the global network down. I have to support Ukraine. I have to support this. So these people just go with whatever it is. So why do they don't need guns. They really don't need any guns. The people who want to do their own thing are the ones that say, I might just want to have this handy. I'm not going to use it, obviously. Hopefully. But I don't want to become the parts of Australia where they ran through and hemmed people up. I don't want to become Shanghai, where I don't know if it's acting or fake or not, but we are seeing people getting pulled out of their apartments and quarantined. I did a video on the public regulations that they did in New York. They already passed this stuff. So when I was blue-pilled, I agreed completely. I was like, where's the gun control? And then I slowly woke up. I'm like, wait a second. It's just common sense. It took a while. I mean, it's hard when the media feeds you this same narrative. And then after a while, you think like, wait a second. Just because you pass a law, what does a law do? It affects people who obey the law. It doesn't affect criminals. So when you look at gun violence, you're like, okay, where's most of the gun violence coming from? Let's start with that. It's illegal use. It's people breaking the law. It's corruption through drug dealers and all that through police and politics. So we've got bigger problems. The law is not going to do anything but stop the person who's obeying the law and put them more at risk. It took it for me. Oh, it sounds simple now. But when you get indoctrinated, and I was always an independent thinker to a certain extent, but obviously still indoctrinated, I didn't even really wake up until 2 years ago. I'm over 40 when that happened. I'm 44 now. So that's crazy. I'll go through a couple comments here. If you're just joining, it's not a happy stream, but one of those days. Look up Tim Pool. Keith Cindy Panama says, look up Tim Pool. He interviewed a woman from China. Yes. I am very fond and familiar of Lily Tang. Lily Tang Williams. I did a video. If you look back at the channel, I found out about her through Tim Pool. That she was on. That was her third time on, the most recent time. And yes, she's running for office. She's great. She brings perspective to the conversation. I like the perspective that she brings. Lily, honestly, I don't trust anyone that speaks ill of Russia or China. This Ukraine war has opened up my eyes to the deep state game. A lot of people, yes, Lily is great. Deborah says Lily is great. I'm a big fan of hers. I just like, you see that reserved passion in her. She's always like very, not too over the top, but always intense with, this is, I've never been to China. I haven't been to that many countries outside of America. When I was younger, I've been to Jamaica, but I'm trying to think. I've been to Canada, but I haven't been to that many countries. So I'm not that well traveled. I read about this stuff, but that's not the same thing. And even when you do travel, sometimes you stay in these touristy areas and you don't really get a feel for the culture. But my point is, if you see that, maybe we might have more appreciation for what we have in America and understand what these rights are and come to the conversation with a more measured approach. Lily survived and escaped communism and says it is here now in our country. So she's saying that. And she has experience. She has the background to be able to say that. If you don't know who we're talking about, she's I would think you would consider her a libertarian. This is Lily Tang Williams. She's excellent. Wait, why am I not? I follow too many people. I thought I already followed her. I don't know why. That's weird. I'm pretty sure I already followed her, but okay. But she's a libertarian type of candidate, and you see it, she's Lily for Liberty. So thanks for bringing her up. She's very important to talk about in these days. When things get tough, like the pandemic and these shootings, that's when it's the most important to defend basic liberties. It's not as important. It's always important, but to me, it's a lot easier when things are all fine, nice, and everything's calm. Everybody's having fun. There's no big problems. Same with a marriage. Everything's all fine when you're in the honeymoon, but then if you got things to work through, that's when things get difficult. Yes, there's Brass Hound said they won't let her win. She's too big of a problem. I hope not. She's going to try, but yeah. Stephen Hood, I work with some great people who fled socialist Argentina to come to the U.S. They tell me stories about how bad living under socialism is all the time. They also love to shoot guns, by the way. Thanks for that, Stephen Hood. It is don't take my word for it. They're into it. The Angry Canuck says, I literally thought it was a joke. I typed into NATO and Nazi, and boom, it's true. U.S. and Britain had literally brought in SS generals to start NATO. I don't know the full history of that. Somebody was chatting about that in our chat a while back. And I said I had to look it up, but I haven't had a chance to yet. But thanks for there's been a couple things that I thought people were joking about, but it was really true. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to be out here. Thanks for stopping by. If you were just stopping by recently to wonder what's going on, Unfortunately, there are at least 14 children dead and multiple injuries reported after a shooting at a Texas elementary school. Homeschool is trending. My God is trending. Like in my God. On Twitter is trending. It's just a natural reaction to it. And Twitter is the best place to get the quick news on these type of things. Chris Murphy says, "Oh my God, I'm shaking. I'm just shaking all over with fear, with anger, with resolve." Nina Turner, populist left, former Bernie, I think she was the campaign manager. The number killed has risen to 14 children, one teacher. My God, these poor babies. Politicians need to act like adults, take accountability, and pass laws that keep guns out of these people's hands. See, there it is. That's not, to me, that's not evidence-based. Let's have a real evidence-based discussion. And Andrew Yang made a good point. He said something to the effect of, when we pass laws, attached to those laws should be the expectations from those laws. So if you do a law on whatever, X, it should be saying, we're passing this bill because we're expecting inflation to go down. Or I don't know what, you tie it to something. So you can go back and analyze it and say, did it do what we wanted it to do? If it did, okay. If not, because it's always this game where you pass the laws and it's for the people. What does that mean? Like, what is it really supposed to do? A great example is the Georgia laws. People on the left saw Georgia passing laws that made it a little bit more secure to vote. Really didn't do that much more. Really, I don't think they even rolled it back to pre-pandemic fully requirements. But Democrats said, hey, this making it hard to vote. It's Jim Crow 2.0. So Democrats would have said, we're expecting turnout to be lower, or we're expecting it to be more difficult to vote. And now we're seeing that's not the case. That's the reason why they would never do what Andrew Yang said. Andrew Yang has ideas and wants to actually address things. They just want to grandstand and play off emotions. So thanks a lot for stopping by, everybody. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can find a way forward. I think it's much deeper than guns, though. Take care.